So now if I change the topic a little bit and I come on the side of students, so there is this general feeling among faculties and parents and students that somehow our system has become very coaching driven. So a lot of time, be it G or any other entrance exam, our students are taking 2-3 years serious coaching, and they get into, and then somehow it affects their creativity. So is there a way we can make our institutes coaching proof, or is there even a need? I mean, what would be your thought on?
So long back I had written a small article on this. I don't think when the competition for something is so intense, that is you'll take up to 2% of the people who appear, you can make coaching go away. Because it is known to everybody that out of 100, only 2 students will get it. Therefore, somebody will come and tell you, regardless of the nature of exam, somebody will come and tell you that, look, I will tell you how to crack this exam better. So as long as we will be exam based, whether it is this or PMT or UPSC or you name it, right? I mean, now there is coaching for GATE, there's anything else. So as long as it's exam based, you are not, and the competition is so tough, you are not going to get away from it. To be able to do something which is outside the exam is a challenge in India in general. But just to mention, we have done something, a small step perhaps. So besides the exam, which is JEE, we give up to 10 bonus marks, 6 or 10, for various achievements in school. Non-academic? It could be academic or non-academic, but not the board based, not the JEE based. So we've said it could be Olympiads, it could be chess, it could be sports, it could be culture, it could be a range of things. The only thing, our restriction is that we rely on existing government systems to filter them up, and we recognize some certificate. So if DST in its Inspire award, if they give Inspire, we'll give you this thing. Now that's for innovation. But it has to be some system outside which is there. So perhaps if in a long sense, if all the other agencies encourage, whether it's sports or this, that, in some ways, and then other institutes can take cognizance of it in some small ways besides just one exam, perhaps things can happen. But as long as we are exam based, we'll have coaching for that exam, and we are going to select only few. So my prescription, tongue in cheek, was that let's partner with coaching institutes, and hey, maybe since they're going to be there, maybe let them coach better things so the students learn better. So you can't, if you can't beat them, which you cannot, then join them, be partner with them. But that was, it's possible, but I don't think we can ever, that's very hard.
I mean, this is a vague suggestion somebody made to us. Could it be, if let's say selection process you can't do much about, but what if the student has come through these exams and coaching, can you be more strict, the institute, let's say IITs or triple IITs, and then judge them very, based on their creativity, and not be afraid to fail students, let them, as you said, you have tenure for faculties, so why not similar scale for students? So if you're finding it hard, and
so that's a good, I think some call it indoctrination or detoxification kind of program is probably needed, because there is indeed, it seems to me, that's a societal thing. It seems to me people think that getting in IIT is the goal. And that is indeed one of the goals, but that is not the goal. I mean, that's only starting of your education. And so first of all, so you need to sort of, first go and then have them, I mean, we've started a little induction program where we try to tell them that learning is more important, not the marks, and we give them instances of how people get better opportunities, jobs, etc., based on what they can do, not based on their marks. But you can't do that in school, because because the outcome of school is get into college, and the college is only looking at marks. So it's very hard to change here, but in college we can change. And so for that you need to have some program of sensitizing them, telling them about things, breaking them out of what they exist, counseling them, etc., etc. And I don't mean just the mental counseling, but counseling them about, and then hope that things work out, counseling the parents that, look, this is just the start, life is long ahead. But at the very least, we can start with that. Whether it will solve the problem or not, it can make a dent on it.
So are you seeing more excitement for engineering once you do this detoxification? Does it work? I mean, have you seen changes, quantifiable changes?
So I don't know that. I don't know whether we can measure it or whether we can assess it. But what we're doing is that something I know IIT Delhi is also doing. We have started an engineering building course in first year itself, where students build something and show, and they get certain budget. And I remember, and I go always in that. So at least one anecdote, I remember some girl said, "Sir, I never even screwed anything or unscrewed anything in my life." Because after all, she was preparing for JEE and the parents were giving her food in her room and everything else was being served. So obviously she didn't have to do that. And she says, "Here I was forced to build this thing." So she felt as if there is a great thing that has come to her, which was pushed onto her. But I think those kinds of things would be there. Of course, there are some students who are very good at it also. There is no doubt about it. Some students are just very good. So
just to continue this, like if you have to advise students who are in first year of BTech program, what would you tell them, how to start their career, and should they think of building more things and, take it little easy?
So we do in counseling, in the induction program, we now have a 1 week induction program. So one of the things we do, the message is there. First is that, look, learning is the most important thing, not marks. And while sometimes marks of a person who has learnt less may be higher because of the nature of exams, etc., by and large, in institute like ours and IIT's, learning and your performance in CGPA is by and large fairly highly correlated. The best students who know the subject very well are indeed also come out towards the top. But it's not a perfect correlation. So you need to tell them, number one is this: if you learn, you will do reasonably well. Number two, it is these people who do better in terms of jobs, in terms of what they get, because these people, when they come, and we tell all our students, if you're looking for a high paying job, they do 5 rounds of interview, 4 rounds of interview. There's that, and they will assess and find out. After all, they're going to pay them 15-20 lakh rupees a year, so they're not going to shy away from assessment. So they assess them deeply before they hire them. So you better be prepared. That's what will get you a job. The other thing is, which I often find, and this is somewhat, which is in some sense against what I just said, but I think students are way too goal-oriented, long-term, right from start. I mean, people come first semester, "Sir, I want to do this." So there's a couple of things I said, please, if you already know that you want to do an MBA after 4 years, then why waste your time in IIT or IIIT? I mean, there are better places where you don't have to do much in 4 years and you prepare for your MBA. And the fact that these 4 years, you have said these 4 years will have no influence on me. I have already decided what I'm going to do 4 years from now. So these 4 years have no influence. While I think these are the 4 years which will have the maximum influence on your life. In my life, that at the maximum 5 years it used to be. I mean, these are places where you should open and let an IIT or IIIT or DU, I mean, these places influence you. Let it influence you. So that's number one. I don't this thing. And then the first semester onwards, some summer people will come, "Sir, I want some internship." I say, "Bhai, jao Bharat darshan karo, ghumo. Why do you need to do internship? You'll be working through your life." So I think this very goal oriented very early, and there is not something I would advise. At the same time, I'm very clear with students. During the semester, please focus greatly on this. And I also tell them semester is 4 months and 4 months. So you have plenty of time to chill and work and relax and do whatever you want, but do not ignore your learning during the semester. But after that, you don't have to always be learning, right? You open your mind. So I find these things, students very goal-oriented, almost as if they've laid out because their parents or somebody told them that do this, and not exploring, not letting the people, the education, the world influence you, is in some sense closing yourself.
And a lot of institutes are actually encouraged, and sometimes students do get encouraged, and now we sort of have a culture of startup innovations and some inventions. So, like a basic question, what would it take for us as institutes, research institutes particularly, to make high-end inventions? You know, I mean, are we thinking, are we doing, what's the status, and what are your thoughts on?
So, one thing we should be a little careful here. So, invention and innovation is meant for generating value in terms of economic value. The goal, as stated earlier, for a university is knowledge creation and knowledge dissemination. Now, knowledge creation can lead to innovation, but innovation itself need not necessarily lead to knowledge creation. Now, in an aspiration for innovation, which is a goal for industry, we should not lose sight of our goal for knowledge. However, there are those areas where knowledge creation and innovation do intersect. The knowledge that you've created can lead to something nice. It is in that sweet spot that you can operate. But that has to be very clear. So it could be high technology, it could be newer things that are coming up, but not just incubation. Incubation can be a standard business, something which is there, a new e-commerce for selling something very exciting. Could be a very nice innovation. This is some way of getting student feedback and doing something is good. But that I don't think has room in an academic this thing. But something that is technology led, some new innovation has research leading to something, that's good. And so that's where the university's incubation ought to be pitched at. Few high-end technology or whatever it is doing, more which is tied to its core mission of research and education. Then it makes a lot of sense. And thankfully now the Indian industry seems to be maturing, that it needs innovation, it needs newer technologies. See, 10-20 years ago there was always this thing, why create this fancy technology when nobody can use it here, when no industry can absorb it. I think now we're seeing the industry capability to absorb perhaps improving, and so perhaps we can now engage with them for incubation or do research that can lead to some work in industry.
So interestingly, you brought out the issue of industry participation. So what would you say is the status of academia industry partnership in India? I mean, is it to your satisfaction? Or
no. So it's still the same big gap. Industry is looking at generating value. The value could be by doing commerce, and they're totally legitimate, totally good business. While these guys are looking at creating knowledge. So until you can intersect knowledge that can lead to business, there isn't a meeting point. That would be forced meeting point. And so now I think both sides are moving. This side earlier was looking at pure knowledge, science and knowledge for its own sake, but that has been challenged as well, and there is far more appreciation for translational knowledge, for knowledge that can be converted to value. So there is movement of this side in this direction, and I think there is movement in India in some industry segments in this direction. So it's coming, and you see some cross linkages happening, but it is still nowhere near where it would be in a developed country where there's so many businesses which rest on new technology. I mean, they rest on they come due to new technology. All the latest businesses have come in for, whether it's a Google or whether it is any of these, they've come through high-end innovation in algorithms and research, in the kind of platforms that are used, etc. So it's still not anywhere close, but I think the movement is in the right direction.
But that's partly because of the trust. I mean, the industry doesn't have trust in the academic products or innovations or...
Yeah, maybe trust, but I think it's fundamentally, I think they think these guys are talking, I don't know what, they're talking pie in the sky, and these people say they're only talking Q1, Q2 results and all that. So we've sort of, yeah. But as I said, once you say, okay, we are doing some research that you can use, and they say, okay, let me see whether this can generate value. I am only interested in market. These people are only interested in marketable things. While these people are interested in also knowledge for knowledge's sake. So that I think is still so call it a trust issue, maybe because the value systems are different.
But do you think it could increase and if we allowed more interaction between academia and industry? I mean, encourage somehow, have a faculty work with the...
True. So, I mean, these are debates which have been going on at least for 20, 30 years that I can think of. I've participated in many of them, but I can tell you both sides, these are, until the industry really feels the need for new technologies, new methods, new this, that, they will say it, but it will not happen. Because we've realized that even when you talk to them, you go and meet with them, there is nobody here whose performance indicator is, one of the performance indicators is how much have you interacted with academics, how many ideas you've gotten from academics into our company. Unless you do that, they're also performance driven. So now you have at least some of these multinationals have university relations, and so a little bit is beginning to happen. I know some Indian companies have also started relations with Indian this thing. But besides that, we'll keep talking, but then we all go back. The academics will look at what kind of work you've done, paper, this, that, while this side will look at how much profit you've generated, and nobody is looking at whether you got ideas. Here, by the way, movement is more. We've started appreciating and respecting more ideas that have gone to industry. So faculty people, research people would say, hey, look, I did this and it's now found there. I think these people have started respecting that more, but industry is still a little bit, at least in India.
So taking your personal example, you have on sabbatical gone to industry, and so how was that experience and how easy was it for you to transition back and forth? So, I mean,
So transition back and forth is not very hard. I mean, it's personal level hard in the sense that you go, there is a smooth system and all that. So the transition between at a personal level. But I don't think, but the way I looked at it, again, this is because the industry was reasonably mature, was really just applying what I had learned as academic in industry. I mean, so it was really more an application of the principles that one was teaching to students onto real life. That's how I looked at it. And in the process, some new problems also come up, and those problems actually became a little small research problem. So I actually, even in industry, in both my stints, I've published papers and all that from the work that I did there. So you can find then some opportunities to do it simply because your mind is more tuned to looking at these kinds of things. So it's been generally a good thing, and I have always believed that from academics, if I need to go, then going to another academic institution isn't going to add too much value. I mean, how much from IIT-Kanpur, if I go to some other place, how much more would I learn? But here it was a very different kind of experience and so on.
So talking of your personal qualities, you built a new institute and it's doing quite well. So what would you say is your personal quality that helped you get there?
Oh, that's very hard. I don't know that. I can say one particular thing was that I have been writing in newspapers, editorials for last 20 years on education, on research. So I had some ideas, and this became an opportunity to put them in place, right? So to that extent, I didn't have to think, here is a job, now what do I do? So I had some ideas which I was able to put. Other than that, personality traits, I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to self-assess, right? So somebody else should say what was there. But you clearly need to be somewhat open and listen to others and not be dogmatic about things. I think all that has to be there. Yet the goal has to be clearly articulated. So, some of these goals, 8, 9 years, my colleagues would argue about various things, but these goals are not touched. We continue focusing on that.
Just little while back, you were talking about how important it is for students to open up and do other things. How important it is for you to balance work and life, and how successful have you been in?
So honestly, actually, in the start, I was driven. It's a startup. It was a startup. I was the first employee. I was completely driven. I think I overexerted myself. But in the last these few years, I'm trying to balance at a personal level. To now, I don't work Saturdays as much. I don't do that as much as I used to. But on the other hand, I mean, you realize that if you get an opportunity like this, so somewhere along the line, I got this thing in my mind that how many people in their life get an opportunity to create an institution. I said, I have to make the best of it. So for 7-8 years, I just put in all I had into it. So I think that was good, but perhaps it got too much. So I think I'm balancing now, and it's important. I think it's important. You can't run too long, too fast.
But would you say it's similarly applies to students too, who are kind of making this transition, from after BTech and trying to find themselves? Do you think it helps if they have the balanced approach all along, not just at some point when they're all settled?
No, I think this is a life skill. See, these are life skills, independent. We need to have that. We need to, I mean, life is going to be complicated, it's going to be stressful. We will have to run in a job. You can't be, there is no job where you can walk. Every job requires you to run hard, right? So you can use in between jobs. In our, we tell our students that for each course about 10 hours of work. So when you're doing 5 courses, 50 hours of work a week, that's like a full-time job. But hey, look, you'll get December and summer, to again space yourself and do other things, etc., etc. So I think it's extremely important. I now value it in even more. Ability to enjoy other things in life, ability to appreciate other things in life, and not be just very goal-oriented is extremely important in my view now.
I think with this, I will thank you so much for your time, and we'll let anybody who's interested to ask a question.
Okay, thank you very much.